Hi, thanks for joining us for the story of a movie that took 40 years to produce. That's right, 40 years. So you ask, how is that possible? Well, let's start from the beginning. Back in the mid-'60s, I was in LA watching a nation come apart. The White House had put us in a war and the public wanted out. The streets and parks of America were taken over by protesters, hippies, flower children, and I decided to film it all and then figure out how I would turn it into a movie. I found a highly creative cinematographer from Italy who was as crazy as I was. We both went out together to capture it all on 35mm film. By accident, we stumbled on what was perhaps America's first lovin'. We grabbed the camera from our truck, handheld, raced through the event. Nothing could stop us. We laid down and filmed from the ground, got up, raced to the next scenes, never once stopping the camera. The actors were real, and we had to catch their performances as it happened. By the end of the year, I looked at everything I had captured. I thought, if I could dress everyone in togas, I'd see the Roman Empire in all its glory on its way to its fall. So I sat down and wrote a satire about a messenger from ancient Rome. He comes to warn us not to repeat the errors of Rome, but instead falls in the hands of the politicians, the military, the media, the corporate controllers, the hippies of the 60s, and Rome's history repeats. I cast Terry Thomas and Edward Everett Horton as the TV producers who lead the government, the public, back to the ways of Rome. By the end of the 60s, we completed the film. I was at the Cannes Film Festival when my agent called. My movie had been picked up for a worldwide distribution by America's #1 movie studio. We were truly on our way, or so we thought. At the time, the studio executive in charge was retiring. A young new executive came aboard. He was the one who picked up my movie, but unfortunately, neither the new executive nor my agent ever bothered to show my movie to the retiring executive, even though we asked to see it. Lo and behold, he came back into control with a vengeance, and all hell broke loose. He fired the new exec for disobeying his requests. He then put my movie on the shelf, telling my agent he would never watch it. In response to some legal pressure from us, he reluctantly released it in a few theaters and then quickly put it right back on the shelf. When Terry Thomas heard that, he immediately went on the Johnny Carson show to tell America how he felt about my movie.
An absolutely marvelous film. Written, directed, produced, edited by Bert Tenzer, chap from New York. It's the first film that he's ever made, and I think it's the most exciting film that I have ever seen.
Let's run it. Watch the monitors in the studio, and we can watch it up here.
Following that, Judith Crist wrote a review in the New Yorker magazine comparing scenes of my movie to Fellini's La Dolce Vita, Mondo Cane, Dr. Strangelove, and The Savage Eye, urging her readers to see it, but none of it helped. The movie remained on the shelf. The years that followed were the most frustrating of my life. Every few years I called the studio, pleading to get my movie back. I got nowhere. Then some 30 years later, somebody from the studio called. They asked what I wanted them to do with the movie. It was a completely new management, and for the first time, they were totally cooperative. I told them, send the movie and all the footage back to me, which they did. I then watched it, and after all those years, it was a wake-up call for me. I realized the movie concept was more timely today than it was some 40 years ago. So I sat down and wrote a new version. This time I made Jesus the messenger. When he arrives, he sees life in our 21st century as a circus, with the politicians, corporate heads, media moguls, and everyday citizens acting out their lives as clowns in the greatest show on earth. Jesus gives up, and the message is never delivered to the mad world of today, and the history of Rome repeats. With the new script completed, I began preparing for the filming. However, I decided to do something that rarely, if ever, occurs in the production and editing of a movie. I felt that some of the original scenes with Terry Thomas and Edward Everett Horton were precious, irreplaceable, as was some of the 60s footage we shot. And I opted to write them and merge them into the new movie. And that's how Terry Thomas and Edward Everett Horton of years back joined today's cast that includes William Shatner and 10 contemporary, highly talented actors. In 2006, I shot the new movie, with the new characters acting out their lives as clowns in today's circus of life. Following that, I spent a couple of years in and out of the editing room, merging some of the 40-year-old scenes with all the new scenes and the new story of today's Americans repeating the fall of Rome.
Your fate been 2,000 years and it's too late.
So do Romans who lived the fall of Rome have come to our mad world that is now our home. Was once their circus, they came to an end. What message do they now send?
It was a never-ending creative challenge. I titled the new movie Finally, in 2008, the movie is ready to be seen. Now you know why it took 40 years to complete. This movie asks the question, if Jesus arrives today, could he save us? I now ask this question, if Jesus does arrive, could he save my movie? If history repeats, the answer would be no.